Alright, welcome. My name is Sarah. I'm a tarot reader, and I have here for you a kind of timeless, general, open, collective reading. There's information in my description box, just as a bit of guidance for when you're watching. But I just, I hope you enjoy it. I hope you can get something from it. Please use your discernment, take what's resonant and leave the rest, right? So I'm actually asked about, I went back to a reading that I posted probably maybe a couple of months ago, maybe. It was called Intensity, Gentleness. And there was a symbol that came up in that reading that I was kind of curious about when I was doing the recording, but to be honest, it feels kind of like somebody wants to know about it. So I have asked about it, because in that intensity gentleness reading, it came through, it's the golden rectangle, right? So it's got this kind of geometrical energy to it. It's very vortex-like, right? The shape of it. And there was a bit of a hint of like the mathematical as well, because of the geometry. So yeah, I was curious about it for that reason, right? But I kind of felt like, oh, this perhaps isn't for me to understand if it's maths. Yeah. Right? But yeah, I've been feeling to delve a bit more into it. As I say, like partly because I feel like somebody maybe wants to know what it's about. So I went back and had a look at the notes that I had from that other reading, from that interpretation. So what came through there, it actually came out in that reading with the King of Pentacles, right? And the King of Pentacles is here as well in the main spread of the cards, right? Which is interesting. So it was, the message in that other reading was, understand the proportions, look at the proportions. Golden rectangle, right? For ratio, the required ratio, the answer is in the rectangle, right? And then it was like, understand the proportions as applicable to the structure you wish to create. It's being pointed out to you, right? Understand the proportions as applicable to the structure you wish to create. And I think when I was kind of reading the cards, I think I maybe kind of thought it was a particular kind of structure, right? Something very, very earthy, very physical, perhaps, with the King of Pentacles. But it was interesting because I was actually guided to sit with all of the other cards and sit with this one last. And so I did that, but I'm to start with it in this recording, right? So the structure that I think this King of Pentacles character wants, or sort of wishes to create, right? Because wish has a different kind of meaning from want, doesn't it? So it's like a wish, the structure you wish to create. And then when I sat with this card to try and understand that a bit more, this started to show itself to me as a door. As a door, right? Yeah, like a door, a threshold. So the idea of thresholds and boundaries has been coming up a bit in these readings as well. So like a door, a threshold, a means of entry, right? A means of ingress. I mean, it could also be a means of egress as well, a means of exit, but that's not really what it's about. It's more like an entry point, a threshold into, right? But interesting, it's interesting, right? It's because in the context of structures and like earth and things like that, you could be even thinking, is it actually a literal fucking door? And maybe that might be applicable in some way at some point. But the door that I'm talking about, really, the way I'm speaking about the door here, is a kind of a metaphorical door, right? It's sort of symbolic of, think, like a certain point and having something kind of cross over that point into something, right? So it's got like a portal kind of vibe, right? You're going sort of from one space into another. Going from one energy into another. But so I've written in my meditation, it was kind of door, threshold, means of entry, to allow someone or something to come home, because it came out with this kelp card. Kelp is this card very much speaks about like home and like a really true sense of belonging. And the authors of the deck title it The Tidebringer, right? So then there is like a kind of reggae soundtrack to this reading, straight up, and a bit of Bjork as well, mainly reggae, with a peppering sprinkle of Bjork, right? But so it was like that, The Tide is High song, right? The tide is high, but I'm holding on. And it was by it was by a band called the Paragons, right? Paragons. Right. Right. So it's a paragon, a personal thing regarded as a perfect example of a particular quality, a personal thing that's viewed as a model of excellence, or a perfect diamond of 100 carats or more, right? So, right, which could be like someone who's just like a fucking diamond, do you know what I mean? But so like something very highly regarded, right? Something very highly regarded. Yeah, kelp. So it talks as well, this card, about our place in the world and our relationship to other living beings, right? So I see what I mean, like that sense of belonging. Home and togetherness, weaving into the web of place, the language of our true home. Yeah. Secrets we know in our hearts, the home place of our magic, thriving interwoven net of life. And then I've just written in capital letters like welcome home. And there was another, and this tune has kind of been showing up on my shuffle a lot this past this past couple of weeks, right? A lot. And it's a song by Junior Byles called It Was a Long Way. It's like early 70s reggae tune. I would highly recommend that you listen to all these songs. If you don't, if you actually need urgent to do that. Right, It Was a Long Way. Or he's singing about right, yeah, like him and his partner, right? They took the long way. They took the long way round. And he's sort of saying, like, you know, so don't break my heart. Don't you do it. It's that kind of, it was a long way, but welcome home, right? Welcome home, you paragon of excellence. Right, so it's like the structure that the King of Pentacles character was wishing to create was actually like a doorway, which with all this watery energy, right? The King of Pentacles here actually came out with seaweed, which is a lot of water as well, right? The home, seaweed lives in the ocean, its home is the ocean. Kelp is a variety of seaweed and its home is the ocean. So there's all this home energy, right? And it's coming through with a bit of a King of Cups vibe as well here, because of the crown, the water. I've got a deck where the King of Cups is a humpback whale, so it's brought that in really strongly. So it's this King of Pentacles, it's very earthy, practical kind of material. There's a right material world, kind of pragmatism going on here with this character, but there's all of this water. And the structure that they wish to create is one that will let some water pass through it, right? So elementally in the tarot, like water signifies sort of the emotional world, the sort of psychic, the inner. It's very inner world, right? Which is different from this possibly kind of outward facing, or it's earth and air here, right, with the King. It's like a very well developed, very capable in the element of earth. So earth is like just a very tangible element, right? It encompasses like all tangible things. It's a different element from water. So the structure that they wish to create is different from what I thought it was in that other reading. Basically, it's this kind of it's a structure that allows somebody to come to where they belong, right? Get someone to where they belong. Right? How do they get somebody or something? How do they get them through that? How do they create the space to do that? Because he's holding this pentacle, right? He's got this pentacle here, it's this big large pentacle. So the Ace of Pentacles in the tarot is like the first, right? It's the Aces of Wands in a suit. It's like a starting point, or The Ace of Pentacles is actually a very fortuitous card. It's a very kind of very fortuitous card. And the Aces often signify, or one of the things they can signify is like opportunity, right? So there's something here. There's something here about creating an opportunity, right? Creating an opportunity to kind of allow some kind of movement, so they can welcome someone, right? Or they can welcome something. But that's the interesting thing, is that they hold that. So it could be something they wish to create, but they haven't, right? There might be something about perhaps not not realizing maybe that they can do something. They can create a doorway, or they will create a doorway, or it hasn't been done. I don't. We'll come back. Okay. Right. So doorway, a doorway, a threshold, and this idea of belonging, right? Okay, so there's some stuff that I think before it's just an understanding I kind of have about this. That it's there, right? There's this very much an idea of titration and intermingling, right? And it's interesting because within this reading about this structure, we've got the Queen of Wands. So she is predominantly fire, right? Because she's the Queen of Fire. Wands of fire. But all the queens are also water. So this particular queen's elements are fire and water. The King of Earth is earth, but all the kings are also air. So this king is earth and air. So you've got fire, water, earth and air here, which is all of those elements, isn't it? And then you've got ether here, came out with this Queen of Wands. So there's like this sort of upper air, this kind of higher aspect here. Quite a spiritual energy, right? So you've kind of got earth, air, fire, water, and some spirit energy here also. Because the thing about the golden rectangle is it's harmonious balance, right? It's harmonious balance. Harmonious proportions. So that's the idea of like the titration and the intermingling. So I've written about this as well. Beyond its mathematical perfection, it's believed that it represents the four elements, earth, air, fire and water, right? In perfect balance. The form is said to create a natural energy vortex. The four corners represent cardinal directions, seasons and fundamental aspects of human consciousness. This multifaceted symbolism makes it a powerful tool for understanding the interconnectedness of all things. Perfect and harmonious balance. The ratio, the required ratio. Ratio. Okay, just a little break. Okay, golden rectangle. So I've already said, worded slightly differently, that the structure wishing to be created is one that will allow a particular energy to pass through or enter into a space, creating the means by which something can be introduced into, right? Portal vortex. I don't know why I've just repeated that, actually. Right, okay. So the first tarot card that came out was Death, right? So Death is the major arcana card for Scorpio. And that was sort of the thing that was kind of coming to the forefront. Oh, bloody hell. Remembered why I paused it now, why I repeated. Oh. Okay, let me just, before I get into the Scorpio aspects. Okay. So the thing about the harmonious balance, right? There is this thing about like titration and intermingling, like I was just discussing about the fire, water, earth and air, right? The harmonious balance that's represented geometrically by the golden rectangle. And this sort of titration and intermingling, there's something about like incorporating a different energy, perhaps with some hesitation or reluctance. Accepting the duality as a whole. It's not all of any one thing, but it's everything. Light and dark, and all within that. When light and dark are brought together, the mixture of energy is where the creation happens. It's what we create with, right? And I've put a person / people with range. Okay, I think what's kind of going on in a broader sense in this situation that I'm taking a little while to get to is, I think what I've been talking about with this, there's something about the maths of this. There's something about irrational numbers because it's a square root of 2? Is it square root of 2? It's an irrational number, right? And that I was saying about the required ratio, the required ratio, right? For the harmonious balance, it's like the root of the word rational is ratio, isn't it, in Latin? It's ratio. So it was coming through actually as like needing to be a bit less rational. Right, you need to be a bit less rational about because of the harmonious balance, right? It's like there is a lot of perhaps a lot of logic or rationality being applied to something, when being less rational, maybe being a bit irrational, is actually kind of required for balance, right? It's that, like, it's not all of one thing and none of the other, it's everything. You kind of need it all in the mix, because that's the harmonious balance that you can create the doorway with, right? And it's also that harmonious balance, it's perhaps the energy needed to support whatever it is you are wanting to invite in or trying to welcome home, right? But because the King of Pentacles is Taurian energy, right? So Taurian energy, it can represent sort of very someone who's very fixed, or something that is very fixed and quite hard to shift. So it's very stable, but it can also be like quite a stubborn energy and things. But it was sort of coming through here as like a kind of a belief or a mindset that was, it was like a very, very set belief, a very, very set mindset, right? Not really like stubborn, but just something that is like, which could be like how somebody views themselves, right? They could view themselves as being very logical or very practical or very rational, right? But they're coming through here as like a King of Pentacles, which is earth, but it is incorporating that air, right? Air would be the more kind of like logic, rationality sort of element, but that is there. So it might be someone who has like a very fixed viewpoint of how they are, of how something is, maybe, right? Very set. Because so there is like this idea of ego here as well, right? But not egotistical, sort of overinflated, not that at all. So just as a bit of a framework for understanding, I'm just going to sort of mention like the Jungian concept of the ego, right? Because it's kind of coming through that as that more here, right? So Jung sort of theorized the ego as like the center of consciousness, and it represented our subjective identity that experiences and interacts with the world. It's the part of our personality we present to the outside world, often through a persona or social mask. And it acts as a filter and organizer of thoughts, feelings, and sensations. Right, so King of Pentacles, Earth, it could very much be a particular kind of aspect of how they show up in the world, right? External stuff. Right, and then so it's essential for navigating daily life and functioning in the world, but an overemphasis on ego can lead to inflexibility and disconnection from other parts of the psyche, which, right, can kind of hinder your personal growth. But it was the inflexibility bit, right? So it's that idea of like a very set belief, possibly in like how they perceive themselves, right? That subjective identity. Right, so they see themselves as very rational, and they filter like their thoughts, feelings, and sensations maybe through this kind of really rational kind of lens, perhaps. But they're coming through with all this water, man. There's loads of water. right? Okay, get into the cards. Now it's time to get into the cards because, right, I've put destruction of very set ideas and beliefs about self, about the world. And there is something about sort of destruction of ego and changed viewpoints, but it doesn't at all feel like a kind of really aggressive, difficult experience. To be honest, how it's, you know how like dry earth, not saying it's dry, but as an example, right, you know how when earth is dry and you add water to it, like all the moisture comes and the earth kind of softens, right? If the hard earth is kind of symbolic there of like a very set way of viewing yourself, it's like all this water has come in, so it was actually feeling like it's confirming or it's communicating that like there has been this kind of softening with this King of Pentacles character. Or some particular belief or viewpoint, or maybe in how they present themselves, right? Something about it has softened because there's all this water. So it's like it comes through this, like water would make its way through the soil. It's like it does come through this, right? Yeah, because the soil would still kind of filter as opposed to water, right? So it's this earth energy, this pentacles energy is still very kind of prevalent and very strong. But there is this water. Because, right, kelp is a variety of seaweed because they want somebody to come home. They want someone to come to where they belong, right? So, right. Okay, so that was that. Then we've got the death card, right, which just came through like Scorpio, which is the opposite to Taurus, right? Remember I sort of said King of Pentacles is Taurian energy. So Scorpio is the opposite of Taurus, and it doesn't have that same associations of like stability and kind of firmament. It's just a very different energy. It's a deeply, deeply, deeply transformative energy is Scorpio. So it's, you know, it's associated with like ideas of death, resurrection and regeneration. It's an extremely intuitive archetype. There's a lot of determination and magnetism that is kind of inherent with this archetype also. It's quite mysterious as well. Mysterious. I've written strong-willed, capital letters, and fucking underlined it 3 times. Strong-willed, right, which took me to a quote, right, that I heard in something that I watched, I think a few days ago, right, and it was somebody quoting, is it Antonio Gramsci? I think he was like an Italian Marxist philosopher, right, but it was something about like the pessimism of the intellect and the optimism of the will. Right, because of strong-willed has been like thrice underlined. So I think this is representative, right, with that kind of death, resurrection, regeneration, the determination as well. Yeah, man. It's also like a very deep, right? It's associated very much with like depth, is scorpionic energy. It's very compelling. There's also like a high capacity for forgiveness as well. But always with Scorpio, right? Insightful with the darker side of things. So I think this signifies a point, right? The strong-willed, where the optimism of the will has kind of been the thing that has kind of come through some, I think, quite significant, maybe quite challenging sort of transformations, maybe in there's something about ego here as well, though. But it's coming through in a different way, and I think it's kind of talking about an aspect of this Queen of Wands, right? But it's like, so possibly this Queen of Wands has had to kind of move through or overcome some pessimism of the intellect. And because they're coming out here with this scorpionic energy and there's this emphasis on the strong will, it's like the optimism of their will has really come through. So saying about the intellect and the rationality, and right, it's not all of one, it's not like all entirely kind of logic and reasoning and rationality and none of anything else, at least in this situation. But I think really it's right. It's talking about like titration and intermingling, right? So there's some like pessimism of the intellect, I think, that, or right, the energy that can put you in as well. There's something here about like heavy-hearted as well, like I think it's here with the borage. Right, but it's like the optimism of the will. Because this imagery as well, it's like, right, it's like the rebirth, the kind of the resurrection has been into this Queen of Wands energy. So this is like fucking powerful shit here, right? This is really powerful shit. And I think it might not be their first rodeo, baby, because there's these other heads down here, right? So it's like, this was probably quite fucking hard, but they've come out, right? It's this idea of someone kind of stepping into a kind of version of themselves. I have to have some water, excuse me. Ooh, right, so what was I saying? Someone having to, right, it's like somebody's sort of been through some, I think, some very kind of deep transformative shit here. Likely not the smoothest or easiest of rides, but they've been through it, right? But they've come out of it as the Queen of Wands, and it's Queen of Wands is a very kind of fiery energy. It's so it's got all the things that you would associate with fire, right? It's a very creative energy. It's a very kind of magnetic energy, actually, right? I said creative. It's very dynamic, sort of vivacious, right? Yeah, there's like vivacity and kind of confidence, right? So it's like stepping into that, or stepping into a kind of a new stage of that, right? Because there's been other stages here indicated. But it's interesting because there's like a handful of earth with a flower here. And this King of Pentacles has got his hand, and it's kind of, right? So there's something about that. Hand of earth. Okay. Right. Yeah, right. So there was Scorpio, a symbol simultaneously of resistance, fermentation and death, dynamism, endurance and struggle. Right. I love this one. A dialectic of destruction and creation, death and resurrection, damnation and salvation. The love song on the battlefield and the war cry on the fields of love. It's from like an old dictionary of symbols I've got from 1932. It makes me laugh. Just the love song on the battlefield and the war cry on the fields of love. Okay, so vibe of Scorpio. But in my meditation, it was kind of coming through as like a sort of xylophone-y type. Xylophone and string instruments, right? Because of the imagery in the card. And it was this idea of like a tune-up. But like vocal cords and like the melody of spoken words. But yeah, like tuning up or coming back into tune, right? And I've written mellifluous and melodic. Oh, that was funny. I just started like, mellifluous and melodic, euphonious and harmonious. And I've put clearance and regeneration. It's like a big clearance energy, right? And then there was another reggae tune. So it was one called Sweet Sensation by the Melodians, right? I can feel those thrills walking over, right? When you, right, but right. So melodic, right? Melodians, melodic. But it was this idea coming out with silence. It was this idea of like a silence split open, because this card has come up in readings previously as not so much silence, nothing, but rather something specific that isn't being spoken, right? It's kind of more that. So in my meditation, it actually started to communicate this like bits of sound breaking through the silence, breaking through the quiet, sorry. Tuning into something and tuning out something else, and like focusing and honing in on, but it had this real auditory kind of quality to it, right, with all the melody and stuff. And then the silence between the notes makes the music, which was something that I came across a few years ago, right? I think I read it, well, I did read it in like describing the Japanese concept of ma, right? Ma. So this idea of like pause in time, interval, emptiness in space, negative space, the space between, the pure and essential void between all things, right? Written, where there is clutter, even valuable things lose their value. Where there is too much, nothing stands out. Ma is like a holder within which, is like a holder within which things can exist, stand out and have meaning. It's the emptiness full of possibilities, like a promise yet to be fulfilled. Yeah, right. So it was this, it started to sort of bring in this idea of like a coded message. A coded message. But it's interesting, right? Because it's like the message is in the silence between the words. There's form there. And it was this idea of like, I suppose, reading between the lines a bit, right? Looking for or discovering. But then I put like, listen for the meaning that is implied rather than explicitly stated. And I put the melody, the transmission isn't fragmented anymore. The message is making it through. Right, that clearance energy. That clearance energy. So sweet flag there as well. Sweet flag is a deobstruent, right? In your body, it clears blockages. But as an analogy or whatever, blockages cleared. So someone's been able to, right, step into a present moment and their essential self, right, which is what I think I'm getting at here with this. Coming into yourself with clarity of heart. Because all queens are about the heart, right, a bit more so than the kings, just in what they represent. A queen of one's energy would stand the fuck out as well, to be fair. Right? Because like there's something compelling, maybe mysterious about them, but there's a magnetism, right? There's like attraction. They have attractive energy. So they'd stand out. Because what have I just said there? Where there is clutter, even valuable things lose their value. Where there is too much, nothing stands out. But this would stand out. It's kind of the nature of the energy, right? Right. Okay. Right. Sorry, we'll get to that. It's coming up in this message. Oh, 48 minutes already, man. Right, so the silence between the yeah, right. So the melody, the transmission isn't fragmented anymore. It's making its way through. The message is making it through. But it's coded, or it has the vibe of a code to it, right? Which is this, like the message is in the silence between the words. There's form, so there's meaning in what isn't being said, right? And perhaps then in what is said, there is a meaning that is implied rather than explicitly stated. So I think it's probably both. Yeah, because it's coded, right? And then I've put, so the vibe of the code, for secrecy or privacy, but the code can be read by the one receiving it because they know the language. The language of home, right? The language of home. And this is where Bjork came in, right? Because that all reminded me of a tune called come to me, and it was just a particular lyric. She sings like, so don't make me say it would burst the bubble, it would break the charm. But she's singing about how much she kind of cares about somebody, she loves somebody, but she's right, don't make me say it. So it's like there's some sort of like magic in something being unspoken, about something not being precisely articulated really directly. There's kind of a playfulness as well, right? There's a playfulness. It's like, because the not saying something is like the holder within which things can exist. It's like there's meaning in not saying it, or not saying something. Might be because it's not said, it stands out. I'm confusing things a bit, right? Deep and impacting ally calls you home and clears your head. So then we go. The next card that came out was, wait. Sorry, I got meditation with this. There was something about like colours getting brighter, smells getting sort of more like visceral, but also like sounds getting sharper or more distinct. So it was this idea of like sensory perception, extrasensory perception, right? But also like a sort of increase in I suppose like sensuality, right? In terms of like sensation cards coming out here. It's like senses being kind of turned up, right? Like being sort of more plugged in or more switched on to your senses, but also like that extrasensory perception, right? Which is like other level stuff, which is here there with the ether. I think, yeah, this death energy's been moved through, or is being moved through, whatever. And it's, right, I think someone's had to adapt, as they are designed to do, as we all are designed to do. But they've had to adapt. I think they've had to accept something and adapt accordingly, or that is what they will be doing or are having to do, which will perhaps require confidence, right? Some kind of new level of confidence in themselves. So actually with the Queen of Wands, because of this death energy before, the Hindu deity Kali Ma came through super strong, right? So Kali Ma represents like the cyclical nature of existence, so birth, life, death and rebirth, right? She's the force that governs these cycles, reminding us that to create we must first destroy, right? So to create this, other things had to be destroyed, right? To create this King of Pentacles, some that I was talking about with ego at the beginning, some sort of very set, rigid thing had to kind of soften, right? That's sort of, I think, the destruction there. Something about how the world is viewed, or someone in relation to the world, right? Self in relation to the world. It's the idea there. That's kind of the destruction. It's got like ego in it, right, as well. So as well for this Queen of Wands, I was saying like typically this would be like a confident energy, right? Quite fiery. But if this has been the sort of the result, the rebirth, then it's maybe that they didn't view themselves in a particular way, right? Maybe could be talking about self-confidence, right, as well, because that would be like self-esteem and things like that are all sort of very linked and attached to ego, right? So could be, yeah, the way someone views themselves. But the message is getting through, right? So it might be someone who didn't really view themselves as Queen of Wands, or they didn't see this aspect of themselves, but there's like been this quite sort of difficult, maybe very deep transformative energy kind of coming through as Kalima to have them see, right? So they can step into it. If they don't see it about themselves, they can't step into it, right? They have to be able to kind of recognize what this energy is for them, or how it shows up in them, so they can embody it, right? So they can kind of understand it, to know that it's there. So I think there's perhaps they haven't had the, I mean, it could just be like outdated viewpoints, but there might have been something like missing from it, which they now kind of understand, perhaps. Right, Kalima, so she is the embodiment of time, change, and the raw power of the universe. She encapsulates concepts of time and duality. Duality, right? Especially the duality here. She's like an ultimate symbol of transformation. She's a very complex symbol as well. She's about finding the balance in the interplay of creation and destruction, love, fear, light and dark, right? That idea of duality. It's what I was saying about the titration and the intermingling. It's not all of one thing and none of the other. It's like, I think we are collectively being asked to kind of intermingle. The magnolias here again, talking about like being asked not to resist a natural process that's unfolding. Right, so there might be some resistance to this, or reluctance, whether it's right because it's shifting very set viewpoints or beliefs, or someone who's like really grappled with some shit here in terms of maybe like self-image or self-esteem. So it's a big adjustment, right? Which again, the titration, the idea of titration, right? Adjustments. According to the sacred text, the Devi Mahatmayam, Kalima was born in a moment of intense crisis. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think that this process is going to have been an easy one at all. It's not necessarily the energy of a crisis, but that's all kind of in it, right? It's ruled by Mars, it's Scorpio, so that's sort of indicative of the energy of crisis. But you get what I mean? It's just like, it's fucking something quite difficult or just intense. But it's been the catalyst, right, for the regeneration. something about maybe this or all of this together, right? It provokes a deep response. So a moment, well, yeah, right. So a moment of intense crisis provoked a deep response in somebody. It's that depth of Scorpio. So it's kind of provoked this deep regenerative rebirth energy, right? But this could also have provoked a deep response elsewhere. That could be the kind of softening of the ego over here, right? Because there's interplay. There's interplay. There's a real balance of elements here, like I said, with the fire, water, the earth and air, the harmonious proportions, right? Kalimar was the consort of Shiva, the destroyer, the god Shiva, the destroyer, who saw her and loved her immediately. Right, so there's a lot of destruction there, do you know what I mean? The kind of destruction inherent here, right, and the kind of breaking down and things like that. The destruction of very set ideas and beliefs, the kind of ego thing that's actually kind of more, it's kind of come through as this softening energy, but it's still, right, still like significant change. Kalimar and the destruction and creation, and Shiva, who was the one of the three gods, right? You had Vishnu, who's the preserver. Was it Brahma that was the creator, and Shiva that was the destroyer? For creation, right? So that very set, that softening had to happen, and this one's been through had to happen, right? That destruction had to happen for the creation, right? Process, baby. Process. Right. Okay. Quite a long one, I think. Junior Biles over here with it. It was a long way. Right. Yeah, stepping into the light of the self, a new stage of confidence. But the duality here as well, right? Because it was coming through like ego, humility, shyness, confidence, composure, awkwardness, joy, wariness, creation, destruction, love, fear. Because I was getting a bit of a vibe of like a wallflower, and this sense of like caution as well, because of something that happened in a different time. But Kalimar, right, and their associations with time, it's like that's all kind of been cleared. That's part of what's in this, I think, what these two heads represent, right? What's had to be cleared, because there was some wariness. I've written confidence knocked before, so it's shaking out, right? So they have to take some action that will raise and fortify it. I've also written prove something, question marks, I'm not sure. Maybe prove something to them, and that will, right, it proves something to them, and that will be what raises and fortifies their confidence, or it will help to do that, right? Beautiful, lovely. Right, so came out with ether. this is great. So she's fire and water. This is like the upward fire triangle and the downward water triangle, right? So it's talking about those two coming together. So it's saying like there's this unification happening or has happened in this one, right? This very important unification, this intermingling, this bringing together. The principles of these elements meet and are unified. That might be once they've taken a particular action, right? That might be they have to take some action that will raise and fortify. Yeah, and that will be when the principles of these elements meet and are unified. It kind of, right, it unites. They have absolutely got the power and the competence to do this. They've got the power and the competence to do this. And it's almost like they're also sort of like somebody is, or some entity, whatever, is wishing them well, wishing them to be strong, right? Because this thing about valency, it's the combining power of an element. So it is that, it's when they take the action and do the thing, it kind of fortifies, because it brings these aspects and elements of themselves, or they, in taking the action, are unifying aspects, right? And there's something very important about them doing that, because it proves something to them about themselves, I think. Yeah. But there was also this idea of interstice, which, oh, I've pronounced that right, interstice, which is like an intervening space, especially a very small one. And I've written it, gap has been closed, which it will be, right? But this action has to be taken. I don't know if they've done it yet, right? But a gap has been closed. And that's bringing me back to like the ma, right? The space between. So it's like the code is understood. Between the lines has been read, right? When they take the action, because I've also written like, and or they have the ability and power to do this. Because there is something about choice here with the lovers, right? And I've just put burn, shine, they shine. They fucking shine. They might see, right? They might see how they shine. They might see where they shine, right? Or they just fucking shine. Right? They kind of see that, right? Because at previous points, they perhaps didn't have that view of themselves. So quite a hard one. Quite a hard one. Okay. Came out with arnica, right? So arnica, put it on your bruises, don't you, arnica? But in my meditation with this, I got like accepting what one can and cannot change. Accepting all of oneself, that is the transformation, right? Yeah, so it is like someone, yeah. This is someone sort of accepting themselves, or some particular aspect of themselves, is this. With all the depth as well with Scorpio. and it, right, depth and regeneration. It could be something about like an unconscious aspect, like something that they weren't really aware of within themselves as well. It's like it was a bit mysterious, right? It was a bit sort of there was a bit of secrecy, but kind of that they didn't really know. They didn't know something about themselves, something like that. But there's having to sort of accept it, right? Because accept what you can and cannot change. Accepting all of oneself, that is the transformation. Right. And then also there's this idea of like sustainer of form. True ally in the face of shock or dissociation, right? Yeah, that is, right? Like a disassociated part of self, isn't it, that? There might have been like an element of shock, right, as well, maybe. Yeah. A bit of shock and dissociation from an aspect of themselves. So there's this like integration. Yeah, Arnica talks about like rebuilding flow and connection in the traumatized spirits, that new trust and development of the soul can occur. Repair and recover, rebuilds with strength and greater resilience for our next encounters with distress or trauma. It's also called the net and the form. Yeah, man, right, so that's really significant energy for someone, is that? Like, it's like having to, I think, possibly accept something that was maybe quite shocking, or there was this sort of disassociation from it, right? But it's like having to accept that, step into some kind of confidence with it, because it's like it can't be changed, right? It's like the change has kind of happened here. So this is what has to be integrated. This Queen of Wands rebuilds with strength and resilience, right? Greater resilience. So something that was perhaps quite distressing, or just really like challenging, that then has to be integrated, because like life has a lot of challenges, right? So it's about equipping them to be able to deal with shit, right? Which has happened very powerfully, right? It's happened very powerfully. They're rarefied as well with this. Rarefied and highly elastic, not overly rigid. So you don't have the rigid ego here. They've metaphorically lost their head twice. So. Right. That is, isn't it? That's like how someone views themselves is really, really shifted. It's for the for the best, I think. Right, so then shall I try and have this be 1 hour 30 minutes? Right, so next we had this Page of Swords, came out with Sensation and Magnolia. Again, this was out in the last reading, Magnolia. So the Page of Swords is like an observation energy, very much like observation, and it's like a learner energy as well. All the pages kind of often depict sort of learning. So I've put learning to see it, curious yet cautious. Because arnica bruises, right? It's like something is maybe still quite tender here. It's the idea of duality, right? They can be resilient, but tender. It's not all resilience and no tenderness. It's kind of, it's all of it, right? It's the duality, which, because it's integrated, it's becoming the oneness. Yes, right. So this about observation and learning. So there was the curious yet cautious. Which might just be a general thing, right? In whatever this situation dynamic is. There's curiosity, but there's also kind of caution. Put like learning to see it. So it was that idea of the space between again, the moth, right? Space between, and interstice came up again. But the actual kind of Latin word for it was like stand between, right? Interstice, like a small gap, space or interval, a break or pause between the notes. The code reader. It's learning to see, isn't it? It's the learning to see the, like, what's not spoken, or learning to hear what's not spoken. It's that idea of like that, isn't it? This is showing a specific kind of point with that. Yeah, because I've written awareness or impression that wouldn't be perceived by many or most. But it was also coming through as like this mirror energy, right? So, because it's between, the page is between, so there's like a mirroring, it's almost like a mirror point here. These two kind of looking at each other, right? There's like a mirror point. Code reader. Awareness or impression that wouldn't be perceived by many or most. So the code is being sent to somebody who understands it, right? Someone who speaks the language. I think I've already said that. It was really like this idea of mirror though, like a mirror. Yeah. And then sensation. So that was kind of the idea of the awareness that, you know, wouldn't be perceived by many or most. This sensation energy. Subtle perception or perception of something subtle. And I wrote the code is there amongst the other elements. Message within a message. I've written nervousness as well with this, with sensation. So there might be a sense of that. That might be something that's perceived, kind of nervousness. Confident, nervous, right? It's that duality again that is being unified. Someone with a wide range. Did I say that at the beginning? Like a wide range of characteristics. They've got range. Which I think is said here as well about this one. Because of the seaweed. The seaweed embodies a vast range of characteristics, and it's like he's wearing this green woven vestment. So they each embody a vast range of characteristics. They are people with motherfucking range, okay? Right, because they mirror, right? That there, the code there amongst the other elements, that's this. Because earth and air, but then there's all this water, right? Which is like the water's the code, right? It's there amongst all these other elements. It's not the kind of front and center, but it's like it permeates, or it's there. It's there in the manifestation, right? There amongst the other elements. Message within a message, right? So that's the code thing again, right? It's like what's not being said, or what is being said and what's being inferred rather than directly communicated. Maybe just like sensing vibes, right? Sensing vibes. Okay. So the nervousness. That was something about like the harmonious proportions, and almost like getting the right measure. That came through in like a really kind of social kind of way. I did that. Let me finish and then I'll go over that. Right, so King of Pentacles came out with this potential card. It's that idea with Marv, right, wasn't it? Like, it's the emptiness full of possibilities, like a promise yet to be fulfilled. So kind of talking about potential. But really with this card, there's all this water and there's all this fire and the dynamism of the horse, right? So it was really sort of communicating like fire and water again, right? Which the elements of this one. Right, but it's like getting, isn't it? How do you get the fire and water? How do you get them to come out? Oh, is it the social thing? Right. It had me thinking, it just reminded me of like just like a social dynamic, right? And it was like sort of and it, like say it's like two people at a party or something, and one of them is like very chatty and very confident and is kind of going around the party. They have like all this kind of, they're quite high energy, really sociable, right? And you've got somebody else who is just kind of very quiet, maybe. They're not sort of going around the party and really chatty and doing all that thing. They're quite quiet, but they want to sort of talk to each other. But it's like they recognise that they each have to kind of just sort of adjust a little bit to do so, right? So the quiet one might realise like, oh, okay, need to sort of get out amongst people and I need to kind of start chatting. And then the other one, who's really maybe kind of very energetic, do that, might realise like, oh, they're quiet, so I will kind of approach them sort of in a way that's gentle, that kind of matches their energy. Because that's relatable, right? Because ultimately it's like, what to speak, what, right? So it's they both have to do something They both have to make an adjustment to make that happen. That's what this was reminding me of. So, right? So it's kind of here. So how do you get the fire and water? How do you get them over? How do you get them to move? Because this card just reminds me of that Guinness advert as well. So it's the good things come to those who wait. Where the horses are in the tide bringer. Oh, the tide bringer. How do you bring something home? How do you bring something home? Bring it home. And that tune came in as well, right? Again, that Come To Me, that Bjork tune. But this, it was like a tremendous embodiment of energy. And then this idea of like motive force, like motive, which is like producing physical or mechanical motion. So it could be like, how do you get someone to take some action? It's that, isn't it? The action that somebody's got to. The action that this one will be taking, I want to say, by the looks of it. They will be taking it. But they can't be rushed with it, right? Because they've been metaphorically beheaded twice to get them to where they are. And there's this right tender here with the arnica. Good things come to those who wait. But also motive, right? Causing or being the reason for something. But then I got the word like impel, right? Which is like drive, force, or urge someone to do something. Doesn't feel like force. Don't think anyone's being forced to do anything. Urge, maybe, urge. So it might be somebody's urge to do something, or it might be somebody who is urging someone to do something. Be both, right? Interplay. It's not any one, it's not one or the other, it's all of it, right? If someone is like urging someone to do something, somebody else is like having the urge to do something, right? It's all of it. So that's what that was talking about. So water and fire, yeah, I've said that already, right? The tremendous embodiment of energy, which is funny, is it? Seaweed, because the authors of this card, right, like mirroring a tremendous embodiment of energy. So whatever, yeah, it is, isn't it? Whatever's going on with this one is mirroring what's going on with this one in some way, right? Even like the details and things aren't the same. It's like the energy, it's the fire and water, right? And the fire and water, it's the same kind of energetic mix or setup that's kind of there, right? Doing some shit. Mystery, wonder, substance embodies a vast range of characteristics and relationships. So that's that thing again about like personal people with a broad range, right? Which I hope I've kind of, feel like that's coming through here. It's making a bit of a point here for all this duality. It's like there's a broad range within this one, right? And I think that is also here with this one. Embodies a vast range of characteristics and relationships. And this can talk a lot about sort of like manifest circumstance, situation, structures, all of those things. So there might be quite a lot within that as well. Something with all this water, if your body is asking you for kind of nourishment, salty, thick, viscous nourishment, like heed the request, right? Might be like get yourself near some water, maybe have a salt bath, maybe something about electrolytes actually there. Electrolytes. Are your electrolyte levels low? Coconut water is good for that. Or like Celtic sea salt or Himalayan pink salt in water, right? Electrolyte boost, or in your food or whatever. Do you heed that request, dear people? If right. But it's the idea of like what we are made of, what we are connected to, and where we have come from. So it's the idea of belonging and home again. I've already mentioned about it, but a bit of a King of Cups vibe, which is a bit more like heart. And it was also this, there was a bit of a fluttery sensation. A fluttery sensation. So that could be excitement or agitation. Feels a bit less like agitation. Unless it's like agitated by your excitement about something, right? All fired up, perhaps. Firing up your water. Yes! Right? The movement of the water, like firing up your water. Could be the electrolytes, right? Right? Could be a bit of fiery stuff going on. Feeling the fire, feeling the attraction. Feeling the attraction, perhaps. That might be a bit of a confirmation if that's not known then, right? Right. Right, okay. Given what I've been saying about this one, okay, that might not be believed, right? Bear in mind what I've been saying about this Queen of Wands at previous points in the reading. They might only be coming into an energy or a space where they are able to actually truly believe something, because it's more about it's that thing about value and how they view themselves, right? The confidence they have, the self-esteem. So if that has all been low or non-existent or whatever, they might not have been able to see something. But they start seeing it. They're curious, but also cautious. So the caution, right, the cautionary thing still there, or the cautiousness that's in it is kind of, because there's still this tenderness, right? It's a process. Because someone's arrived in this doesn't necessarily mean it's like bam, straight away. Like aspects of it might be, but with the whole duality thing and the kind of merging, right? So there's a flutter, maybe like quite a deep kind of, right, in your belly flip, belly flipping like a fish. Right. Okay, So the Lovers. This actually came out when I was shuffling the deck and I wasn't ready to start taking cards, but I left it out anyway. And then when I sat with it last night, I kind of was a bit reminded of something that I was reading a few weeks ago, perhaps. And it was the idea of, like, you know, is anyone ever really fucking ready? Like, are you ever really like, I'm ready to do something? And they were sort of discussing about how it was perhaps more of a decision, like being ready was a decision that you made, like a choice that you made. So the Lovers can represent choice in the tarot, right? It used to be called choice back in the day. Back in the day, it used to be called choice. So it's like a choice to be ready, right? Like making the decision to be ready about something, with something. After a point, right? Because there are also things that we are honestly not ready for, right? And it wouldn't be good for us to do it, right? The stuff that we're not ready for at certain points. But I think this is what is being described here, is that somebody is, right, somebody's kind of ready to make the decision that they need to make the choice, right? Even though they still might not feel ready. They're ready, but they're not ready. They're ready, they're unready. You get what I'm saying? Right. We can be ready and not ready at the same time. All of it, duality and oneness. So the action that they have to take might be something that they don't feel ready for, right? Which is a bit like the last reading. It was this idea of like following a call, heeding a call, answering a call, that there was reluctance around it, but right, maybe that's in it somewhere, right? Just the reluctance is like not feeling ready. But I think there's something about like that. It's like if you don't see something about yourself, you can't really understand that somebody else might see it, right? Does that make sense? So it's like they're coming into a point where they kind of can see in themselves, or see themselves in a way that somebody else sees them. So they can believe it, so they can make a choice. Is that kind of it? Yeah. Okay. So, but this reminded me of, well, it just took me to a different deck I have. It's the Carnival, the End of the World Carnival Tarot, that those characters have wanted to help a lot over the past while. So it was what they've written in there about the Lovers. Oh, that was my specs, was that on the floor? Right. No matter how miserable the state of things becomes, you know that you shall surely survive it better when accompanied, befriended, beloved. Whether you are already accompanied on your journey or seek a companion, the wise traveller knows that any given pairing is both a collaboration and a contest, an attraction and a tension, components that fit together, and a set of options to choose from. Right? I feel like I've touched upon a lot of what I've just said there in some way in these cards, hopefully. Okay. And I got borage out and I was just kind of wanting to clarify a little bit. So borage is a bit of a bobbing harbinger of allowing and encouraging. Talks about like courage of the heart, right? Leading with the heart. Leading with the heart. It's the following your heart message, again, in a slightly different, right? It's courage of your heart, right? bobbing harbinger of allowing and encouraging. Also just like lovebird, really, because of here, especially because it came out with the lover. especially because of that, right? But it talks about, does borage, it nudges us to approach our goals and values with energy and enthusiasm. Fire would be like the energy of enthusiasm, right? Allowing the room you need for playfulness, spontaneity, optimism and confidence. It lifts a long-bound heavy heart. Right, that's something about like some of what's been cleared. So it's about like loosening our grip on that which prohibits newness, lightness and sweetness as well. Lily pad for your floating spirit. Increasing yields. It's a blues dissolver and heartbreak handler. Yeah, and it's thought that the word borage comes from the Latin root corago, which translates as heart, and also like I lead. Having the courage to lead with the heart. Loosening our grip on that which prohibits newness, lightness, sweetness. Allowing the room you need for playfulness, spontaneity, optimism and confidence. That's that pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will thing again, isn't it? It's going back to that, right? It's not all of one and none of the other. Right? So, right, any kind of excessive pessimism or kind of fatalistic sort of thing, right, just sort of maybe going off a bit more like on a wider collective one there with that energy, right, it's like it's not all of that. There is other stuff as well that is much more buoyant, much more joyful, and much more optimistic. Like that's all there as well. It's not all of this and none of the other, and the same vice versa, right? It's not all kind of sweetness and light and everything's going to be fucking right. But if we accept there's kind of all of it and we sort of bring them together, that's what we create with, right? That's that intermingled energy is kind of where the creation happens. Did I say that right at the beginning? Let's trust that I did, right? So it's yeah, is that sort of like a bound heavy heart is somehow, it is something to do with this pessimism of the intellect, because being all in our intellect all the time, right, it kind of right, it can prohibit newness, lightness, sweetness, optimism, playfulness. Lily pad for the floating spirit. Accepting what we can and cannot change. Anything else here? It's that saturation again, right, as well. I think the point maybe is like just, it's that, right? It's not extremity. It's not all of this and none of the other thing. It's really important that we understand that it's everything. It's both. Like it has to intermingle. You have to find this kind of sweet spot maybe, but it might be especially important, right, for this kind of doorway, like getting a particular thing or one like home, getting them. This might be a bit about creating an opportunity, perhaps. Like something can be utilized, something can be used. It might be that this one has to take their action, right? In the interplay, I've already spoken about the it's like the energies respond to each other, right? The energies kind of respond. So it might be that an action has to be taken, so this one can then utilize something, or this one understands how to utilize something, perhaps, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. Happy days. Thank you for watching. Take care. Enjoy your day, etc., 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 etc. All right. Bye bye.